Hello everyone, good afternoon. I've got a question for you all. How many of you are human beings? Can I everyone just wave their hand? Very good, excellent. So, waste management and environment action is all about people. We often spend a lot of time and effort on the technical side, but it's a human enterprise, it's a human business, and it's about working with people for change. Today, we are going to hear from 6 speakers with unique and wonderful insights about how they're working with human beings for change. It's tricky because every place is different. Every island is different. Every age group is different. It's a complicated body of work to do, but because it's different in every place, every one of us gets to make our own contribution to the design of the efforts that we put in place. So before I invite others to speak, I'm going to share a little slide with, because I get to share a few ideas as well. By the way, I didn't mention, but I'm located in Wollongong, Australia, which is just south of Sydney. And I'm going to share a couple of lessons that I've learned over the years working with projects, many different kinds of projects, particularly around litter. Now to do this, I'm going to share a background video that looks like this. Let's see if this works. This is to get us in the mood for what we're about to discuss. There, can you all see that? Okay, so here are some lessons that we've learned about what makes a difference. There's 4 kinds of things that we found it's important to think about. And these are very general. But the first one is, up here, is that there is a very big job for infrastructure or binfrastructure. It's about, because whenever, particularly waste management is people with a problem. And the problem is, I've got a whole bunch of waste, what do I do with it? So there needs to be a system in place. So a lot of waste management really is about creating just the right systems that work in different locations. And there's serious work to do about creating the infrastructure and the roles and the responsibilities to make those systems work. And the second component is this one here, which is that the whole environment that a community lives in makes a huge difference to the way people manage their litter. And there's an important role for communities and for governments and government agencies and local government to manage places so that they stay clean and beautiful, because litter attracts litter, and places that are clean and beautiful repel litter. It's been one of the biggest lessons that we've learned in Australia, is that places need to be well looked after, and all by itself, it makes a big difference to the accumulation of litter. So those 2 sides, they're about administration and technology. But over here on this side, it's about people. It's the people side. It's about the way we communicate with everyone, the way we speak to them, the kind of messages we use. And 2 big lessons that we have is, firstly up here, is that we need to be polite and friendly when we communicate with people. It can't just be, you are breaking the law, you must do the right thing, you'll get in trouble, you're being a bad person. It really has to be, we're all making a beautiful community together, and here's a lovely thing that we'd love it if you did. Or to say, thank you very much for looking after your litter and caring for the environment. So very positive messages in our communications. And then down here is the 4th component, and that is about the way that it's about people, it's about hearing from people, hearing from the voices of real people who live in real places and who speak from the heart about what matters to them, because when people speak from their hearts, our hearts are touched as well. And it changes the way that we feel and the way we feel about places. When people speak about their feelings of empowerment and making a difference, it makes us want to be empowered and make a difference as well. So there's a wonderful role for culture and art and also spirituality and all these things that come in on this side here, on the human side of communicating with people. Today, I hope that we get to hear, now this is very general, I hope we get to hear from our speakers a whole lot of really fine lessons about the way to implement these kinds of general principles in specific places. So with that in mind, I'm going to unshare my background. Because it makes me look a little bit weird. Okay, there, back to normal. And introduce our first speaker. Now, speakers, as I mentioned before, we're all on a tight time frame for this session. So there's only going to be 5 minutes per speaker, and you will get me popping up next to you with 15 seconds before the end of your presentation so that you know that it's time. And then, although that's 1 minute before, I'll pop up for a while. That gives you a 1 minute warning. And then if you go over time, I'll pop up again 15 seconds after your 5 minute time limit. So are we ready to go, everybody? Ready to go? All right. I'm about to introduce our first speaker. Our first session is about, by the way, look, I should give you a little sketch of what we're doing before we hear from our speakers. There'll be 3 speakers, and then we're going to pop into breakout rooms to share with each other. We'll be in small breakout rooms, just 4 people per room, and there'll be a chance for every one of us to put our thoughts out there and respond to what we've heard and to share the lessons that we've learnt about making a difference. So this is a session for all of us to express ourselves with the stimulus from our speakers. There'll be 2 10-minute sessions in breakout rooms for us to share with each other. So, our first speaker is focusing upon, particularly upon spreading awareness and enabling people to care for the environment better. Our first speaker is Mr. Malakai Somosika. He is the CEO of the Tonga Waste Authority. And he's going to share with us lessons about expanding waste management into the outer islands of Tonga.
Welcome to the third roundtable discussions. My name is Malakai Sika, and I'm the CEO of Tonga Waste Authority Limited. We are a public enterprise or a state-owned enterprise, and so that is mandated with waste management to collect and dispose all waste throughout the kingdom in an environmentally safe to the environment and people's health. Before we talk about the expansion process to the other islands, I think it's important that we paint a snapshot of our geography, how these islands are scattered over the Tonga Ocean. Tonga is an archipelago consisting of 4 main island groups with a total land mass of 700 square kilometers. And it's scattered across 700,000 square kilometers of oceanic territory, or what we know as an exclusive economic zone. As you can see on the map, these are how the islands are scattered all over the Tongan waters, commencing from Wava'u, Ha'apai, and coming to the island of Ewa, which is very close. It is considered part of the main island of Tongatapu. The expansion process to the other islands was basically started in October 2016. The cabinet approved for Waste Authority to expand its services to them. But under J Precinct 2 in Tonga, that's where the assistance is to help Waste Authority expand. So there are some legal process involved. In October 2016, the cabinet approved, at the request under J Precinct 2, for Waste Authority to extend its services to the other islands, which include Wava'u, Pai, Ewa, and the 2 newest. So after this process, it's completed, then we started. We take the team, some consultants from J Precinct 2, under JICA, then we took the feasibility study and survey in Wava'u. This is prior to the commencement. So we did all this work, and it was finalized and completed around 2018, and we commenced the operation in Wava'u. Then after Wava'u, then we plan to establish the waste management services in the next islands, which is Ha'apai, and then to Ewa. But the actual process, the preparation work, the waste collection service, the landfill works that we planned for the operation, and also the public relation and the awareness. They are basically similar in all these three islands. So that's cover almost 90% of the population occupying these islands. Tongatapu, Pava'u. The people who are directly involved with the community. To be effective in our launching of the waste management services in these islands, remember these islands, the service is new. They haven't really understand and accept to pay for waste for the service. The approach we make is to meet with the head of the islands. In the case of Wava'u and Hawaii, he's the governor. It's more like the head of state in those islands. They are the king's representative. And under the governor, then we have direct high influential leaders in the community, which normally involve the island council members, the district officers, the church leaders, the head of government ministries, the people representatives to parliament, the nobles representative to parliament, the business owners, and the town officers. So those are basically the leaders of the community in these islands. So once we understand that, then those are the people that we call to meet with them and the stakeholders meetings, and we do the presentation to these leaders. The key thing is to start with what our resources we can, but we start. By the time we have those equipment, by the time we have the waste to energy thing, the environment is basically securely clean. If we should have waited for the landfill to be upgraded, because it's government responsibility, it's part of the infrastructure thing. Let's start picking up the rubbish. Let's provide the thing. Whatever we can, let's start it.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Malachi. I love the fact that the focus is on just getting started. Don't wait for everything to be perfect, but get involved with the community and get hands on the ground as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for that, Malachi. Our next speaker is Judah Swime. Judah is the president and coordinator of Friends of the City in Honiara City. Friends of the City is an NGO that brings together volunteers made up of people with similar interests who sit down and discuss the development and social challenges facing Honiara City. The aim is to fashion a best way forward for a clean, safe and beautiful Honiara City. There's a real focus there on transferring skills and knowledge from activists and knowledgeable enthusiasts in the community to government and to local leaders. So Judah is going to share his experiences about how that works. Over to you, Judah.
Hi, good morning from Solomon Islands. My name is Judah Swime. Thank you for being part of this roundtable session that is bridging people and West, enhancing consciousness in waste management. My presentation here will focus on the theme, and as you all know, I'm from Friends of the City, one of the registered organizations, NGOs that is established here in Solomon Islands, especially Honiara. The background of Friends of the City, its founder is Pastor Ellison Bako. He's a senior pastor of one of the ministries here, Kingdom Harvest Ministries International, with the vision of allowing people to come together, to become responsible, to have the sense of ownership. So this is the initiative that was driven by that. I am one of founding members of Friends of the City when it initiated and began in 2018. During the setup of the meeting, it was set up by the executive, and also more than 200 people from the city, residents who were there in the initial startup of the organization. In 2019, during our annual general meeting, I was elected as the president of Friends of the City. Until now, we have almost 5,000 members following us in the Facebook. Also, those that are joining us in the campaign, the work that we did here, and it was exciting to know what is happening, because the message that we send out is that we are building a clean, green, and prosperous Honiara city through promoting pride of our city. We are trying to put this mindset of people being conscious about waste. They must know that Honiara city belongs to us. This is our city. It must be green and clean, because littering and illegal dumping in the city are key areas of concern where we drive during our campaigns when we come out and do the actual work. We conducted regular cleanups, awareness, and a lot of things done in the schools during wall event days like World Environment Day will always be with the Ministry of Environment. World Fisheries Day will be always with the Ministry of Fisheries, and we did a lot of things. When we do this work, there is a movement that is happening because a lot of organizations are coming in, a lot of people are coming in, and also part of this cleaning up. So you can see in the slides, that's our work, and that's what we are doing so far, where people movement begins. If you can see there, this is Mataniko River, one of the icon rivers in Honiara. It is cleaned up by the group and with other citizens. During this cleanup, the ministries, even PMO was here. This is one of the cleanups we did for the Australian bushfire victims, and we lead that cleaning up. So this is the slide that you see here. This is the slide concerning that cleaning up, where we lead in everybody with us, Australian High Commissioners, staff, and other people from different organizations and also the city. Some of the impacts and lessons learned here is that the number of supporters to our campaign is increasing, because this is one of the best things people see. You can see young people taking lead. Also, our collaboration with Honiara City Council and other government agencies improved things, and you can even see the city getting cleaner after we come out in the city and do these cleaning ups along the streets as people come in, and also people are advocating for us as well. But there are issues and challenges which we face. One of it is the need of improvement for the city's waste management, infrastructure and facilities to keep the maintenance and cleanliness of what we have did. We need public litter bins and all this, even waste collection services to cover all residents. We also need enforcement and legal for the illegal littering and dumping. Also more campaign and advocate for those who are staying outside Honiara and are coming in. With that, I want to take this opportunity again to thank everyone for this time to do my presentation. Once again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Judah. Even though you're not here in person with us, I feel like just a huge round of applause. It was wonderful to hear a story about volunteers. So many volunteers getting out there. I love the red shirts, the fact that everyone's very visible, the fact that you've found a way to attract young people. And I loved it when you said the city's becoming visibly cleaner. Becoming cleaner even before government is providing the infrastructure to make it possible. So what a wonderful story. Thank you, Judah. And lastly, in this session, I'd like to call upon Camden Howard. Camden is the co-founder and program director of the New Zealand charity Sustainable Coastlines. Sustainable Coastlines' mission is to empower people to care for coasts and waterways. So, Camden, over to you.
Kia ora, and thank you, Liz, for the introduction. It's an honour to be here. And thank you to everyone for their work on this really, really important work stream. Sustainable Coastlines is a charity group founded in 2009. We have now around 21 staff around Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we've worked on community marine litter projects in about 11 different Pacific islands over the years, including the Hapais in Tonga. So I was really pleased to see the example previously given there from the Waste Authority. So I'm here today to talk about waste awareness action that works, and I wanted to share some specific examples of action that's been achieved through our newest program called Litter Intelligence. So first, just to frame it, I think everyone here in this room knows that litter is a problem. So what do we gain by measuring this? And what we've often heard is, we cannot improve what we do not measure. We often see communities that are heavily affected by marine litter, by pollution problems right in their own backyard. But outside of cleanups, they're not engaged or not able to engage as much as they would want to in monitoring, which ends up informing a lot of decision making either through infrastructure or policy or product design or other community programs that affect them and their own backyard. So what we wanted to do was to come up with a program that would allow us to inspire and inform by working with communities better decisions for a world without litter. The program itself is a citizen science program. So that's a program that engages communities with science itself to collect data while cleaning up. And that data is long-term, so the data is repeated and we can understand trends if our pollution is changing over time. It's really high quality. We started with coastal litter using a United Nations Environment Program methodology, and we've established New Zealand's first national litter database now. The technology side of that, which I'll share a link to in the chat, is great for gaining insights on that data itself and actually digging into what the local problems are and learning a lot about that. The other important part of the program is that it's a holistic schools education program, and the key to that is it involves kids who, they're our future, that generation. We want to focus on connecting them back with nature, getting them off screens and outside, inquiring about science, and then teaching them skills and behavioural influencing so they can be the change makers in our society. As you can see, there are a lot of collaborators we worked with to make this happen, and that was actually really key to gain action. We worked with our Ministry for Environment, our Stats Department and Department of Conservation right from the design phase of the program, which was actually really critical to gain buy-in that data would be used for policy making and decision making, even at a government level. And the technology itself was really important, and Microsoft was able to help get behind that to help to increase data quality and to help engage the communities with that data itself. So to date, we have monitoring groups set up at over 250 beaches around Aotearoa, New Zealand. We also have, most recently, you can see there are spaces up in the Pacific, and via SPREP, we worked to set up 7 pilot sites, coastal monitoring sites in Samoa, Tonga, and Wallis and Futuna during International Coastal Cleanup Day recently. And we've also got the ability to enter data from freshwater streams and from stormwater catch pits, because we know they're really important entry points for litter into the marine environment. So the success, in enabling community action, this has been what I'm most proud of this program. Our teams work really hard with schools to engage them in taking actions to prevent waste long term. We had students creating a mural on a large wall beside a highway, which was celebrating the love for their local beach and asking motorists to connect with that spot. We had student journalists publishing their own article in a local newspaper highlighting the plastic problem. We had glass manufacturers removing the plastic foam squares because local groups came to them and wanted them to change them to cork because they'd been finding all this plastic during their cleanups. And we had shotgun shells that were found by students that approached the shooting range and asked them to use cardboard instead of plastic within their products. And then most importantly, I think we've been able to look upstream and try to cut this issue off at a policy level. So the data has been used for environmental reporting, and it's the first time in New Zealand marine litter has been focused on for environmental reporting, and the first time that citizens have been able to submit data to that. That there is really important because it means at a policy level, those things can be solved. And finally, that data has now been used in New Zealand's first voluntary national review on the Sustainable Development Goals. So that means that nations or countries like New Zealand are able to report progress against some of these really, really important key indicators for development. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I really look forward to the discussion, and I'll post a couple of links to the technology and the data in the chat.
Thank you so much, Camden. That was great. Let's give Camden a round of applause, everybody. So yeah, there is an enormous power in numbers. The numbers speak to government and to business and to all of us, because they become a record of the size of the problem, but also the size of the response, the number of people who are out there making a difference. Because there's not just the data that's numbers, there's also stories that we collect as well along the way. There's a good lesson there about to record everything and keep a record of everything, because that becomes the story of our project, the story of the difference we made. Thank you very much for that, Camden. Now, everyone, let's think about our own experiences and what lessons we've learnt and what we could share with each other, or simply what occurs to us. What occurred to us that we'd like to speak of now. So I'm going to pop us all into breakout rooms. I'm going to, so we can have our own discussion, I'm going to share with you a slide which has got the instructions about what I'll ask you to do now. And you'll also see this slide for a little while you're in the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. We're here for our second session. And this time we have 3 new speakers. And the focus is on the words and images that touch people's hearts that we can use to reach out to communities. And the focus is on art, the arts, on cultural traditions, cultural language, and also spirituality, and how we can see examples now of how those things, those components have been incorporated into the waste management communications and into the programs which have been created. So, yep, when it comes to people making choices about their lives and changing people's behaviour, human values really matter. To be able to speak to the values that matter to people, to talk to people as human beings who live on this earth and have an emotional relationship to their community and to their island and to their people and to their families. So we're about to hear from 3 speakers who are using that type of approach or language in the field of waste management communication or environmental communication. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Peter Sapelli. Peter, are you with us?
Unfortunately, Peter is not able to make it today.
Okay, is Peter speaking with a video?
We are currently working to contact him. I would suggest that we move forward.
Okay, good, excellent. So I'd now like to call upon Alana. Alana, because Peter isn't here, please feel free to speak for a couple of minutes longer than what we originally planned. So Alana Smith works with the environmental NGO Te Ipukaria Society based in the Cook Islands. She's worked for that group for 6 years. The society focuses upon biodiversity, climate change, waste management and youth. She's going to particularly look at the role of traditional cultures in raising awareness and improving behaviour changes. So over to you, Alana.
Thank you, Liz, and kia ora from the Cook Islands. Just double checking that everybody can see this PowerPoint presentation okay.
Yes, we see your title screen, full screen.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just going to get straight into it. So when thinking about trying to establish positive behaviour changes, this is a progressive thing. A person isn't going to simply change overnight and all of a sudden become an eco-warrior. It's going to take time. And I believe, you know, one of the founding steps in this process is all starts with traditional practices, traditional cultures, as it establishes guardianship values, connecting people back with the land. So by having this manatiaki value, as we call it here in the Cook Islands, you would typically find that people are more likely going to take better care and responsibility of looking after their surrounding environment. Recently, here in the Cook Islands, we have been able to see how our traditional cultures have played a key role in contributing towards how our people have become more resilient during trying times, particularly during these COVID times. Financial hardships have come into play, so a lot of our people ended up going back to what they knew by living off the land and fishing locally. Sometime now, our capital, Rarotonga, has gotten used to a consumerism lifestyle, with tourism being our #1 industry. We have gotten used to being spoiled with a variety of imported goods. COVID, however, created this sudden change where our people could not live how we used to on this day-to-day basis because of these financial constraints. So communities went back to growing their own vegetables, their own herbs, and went back to composting. We started to reappreciate the concept of going local and those traditional values of sharing produce and what has been caught amongst our families and the wider community. From a waste perspective, this resulted in less imported products that were going back into the waste stream here in our landfill, particularly packaging waste. Subsistence living was becoming of value again. On top of building community resilience, traditional systems are known to be a sustainable and less complex systems. They are not as expensive and not as expensive compared to modern practices that are used today.
Wow.
So from moving into personal experience, this year I had the opportunity to travel on our traditional voyaging waka marumaru atua to all our northern group islands here in the Cook Islands. Marumaru atua is our national symbol for sustainable transportation, but also our waka that ties our people back to our ancestors and how they used to voyage throughout the Pacific. The opportunity to sail and live off Marumaru atua for 3 months actually forced myself out of my materialistic habits to a more simple way of living, a minimalist way of living where our crew reused a lot of mainly our clothes and became more aware and mindful of waste and preserving water and the food that we had on board. This experience allowed me to see that actually I really didn't need a lot of the things I currently owned, and that I had become a part of this consumerism lifestyle that had made its way to a once subsistence lifestyle way of living here in Rarotonga. So to wrap up, 3 take-home points as to how traditional cultures can positively influence sustainable behaviours. We have #1, the traditional practices are able to reconnect people back with the environment, forming these guardianship values of respect and a desire to want to care and protect for their surrounding environment. 2, I guess money is another major factor that would get people to change their behaviours. So when COVID hit, times got hard and this forced people to move back to subsistent ways of living. And 3, traditional cultures are sustainable. They are cost effective, they use natural resources, and therefore result in less waste being produced. So that is my presentation, done and dusted. Les, back over to you.
That was really great, Alana. By the way, did you show a slide then that was of a handmade stone wall based composting system?
Oh, yes, I did. That was a keyhole garden. So maybe not as traditional. It's a bit of more modern sort of design, but very, simplistic systems that we can use today to get better composting and grow healthy vegetable gardens.
That's beautiful. It's such a simple solution and it costs nothing.
Exactly.
Well, so very nice little bit of new tech. In a way, it's new tech, even though it's not made of plastic. Thank you very much for that, Alana. I'd now like to call upon James Bagwan to share with us the role of religion and spirituality in raising awareness around environmental behaviours. James is the General Secretary of the Pacific Conference of Churches. Over to James.
Nisa Bulavinaka and warm greetings from Fiji. My apologies for not joining in live in this very important Talanoa, but I am still on my way home, actually literally on the road as this meeting takes place. Having completed 6 weeks of travel, which included COP26. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity, particularly because ecological integrity is at the heart of both Indigenous Pacific and Christian spirituality. But unfortunately, part of the collateral damage of the modern development project has been the disconnection of spirituality from the development discourse. And this has meant that instead of science, spirituality, Indigenous knowledge, and academia working together holistically, which is a way in which we do things in the Pacific, there has been a fragmentation of the sacred cords that bound us to an ecologically oriented form of development. The result has been development priorities and a response to unsustainable development that does not take into account the spiritual worldview or the connection of many Pacific Islanders, ecological well-being, as articulated through culture and spirituality. Any work to address the environmental protection and waste management in our region must be holistic in its approach, combining the head, the heart, and the hands. And this disconnection means that for far too long, the faith communities, which are embedded in all Pacific communities, have been neglected in partnerships for addressing something that is supposed to be a basic cultural and faith practice. From the Indigenous perspective, it is about caring for the vanua, the whenua, the onua. From a faith practice, it is about caring for creation. Now, the Pacific Conference of Churches, the Pacific Theological College, and the Oceania Center from the University of the South Pacific over the last few years developed a response to this disconnect called Reweaving the Ecological Mat. And that has now found its way into the work for the 2050 Blue Pacific Continent Strategy being put together through the Pacific Islands Forum, in which many of the crop agencies are connected into. And we have seen the positive impacts of partnerships between environmental organizations and faith communities. These have been ad hoc in many cases in response to a current issue. We've seen that in a number of the cleanup campaigns that take place that utilize faith communities who mobilize the community. And most recently, we see that during the season of creation, which takes place from the 1st of September to the 4th of October every year, and has faith communities engaging in a focus on care for creation during this season, this 1 month period. But that can be built upon, particularly to mobilize communities using church fellowships for projects on rural waste management. Faith communities, and here in the Pacific, these are predominantly churches, are the most common institution and agent of social transformation in most Pacific communities, if not every community. We're in the business of conversion, and that includes the much needed ecological conversion, of which our planet is in dire need. Spiritual and theological resources, messaging, and church programs can shift community and social consciousness around ecological stewardship, care for creation, from a prophetic or an advocacy role, a pastoral perspective, and also including practical programs that can be sustained by the community long after projects end. There's also a justice element to this work. There's both creation or eco-justice, but also in terms of social justice and access to information and services, including waste management. Rural waste management, as we all know, is a key issue here. And the faith communities can play an important part in engaging and sustaining these works in the community, from discussing and promoting the 5 R's to proper disposal. Faith communities can help fill in the gaps in these areas. If it's not taught in schools, it can be part of Sunday school. If it's not part of formal community programs, it can be part of church community programs. The Pacific Conference of Churches, made up of 33 member churches and 10 national councils of churches over 19 Pacific states and territories, is very open to engaging in collaboration with partner organizations to take this important task, this much needed shift into our communities. And I thank you again for this opportunity to share with you in your Talanoa today. Vinaka.
That was genuinely inspiring. Thank you so much, James. Marvelous about the role of the fact that all creation is sacred and the partnerships that are, the potential is there for the partnerships to be made in future. So everyone, with that, now I just want to check, is Peter Sapelli going to be with us, Hermes?
At this point, we have no further information, so please do move forward.
That's okay. Now, I'd like to pass it back to everyone now. Let's all stay together in plenary. What I want to do is for us to invite you to use the chat feature at the bottom of your window. So click on the chat feature, which has already been activated and used by quite a few of us in the session. And I'm going to invite each of us to share the part of these presentations that we found most inspiring, the part that means the most to us, and the part that leads us to think about what we would do differently. We're particularly looking for lessons that we've taken away from this. I can think for me, the most inspiring lessons I just heard then were to see all those volunteers, see all that volunteer action, and to see the volunteer action happening before government and the infrastructure was in place. Because the volunteers are people talking to people. We see the volunteers in the street. Everyone sees them in the street doing that work. And suddenly, when we see a lot of other people take ownership, it becomes easier for other people to say, oh, I think I can do that as well. I feel inspired by what others are doing. So that was a very strong takeaway for me. And it really outlines the absolute importance of volunteer involvement, even in quite humble projects, such as cleanups. It all makes a difference. So there's been some quite very interesting points here raised, particularly by Nitish Narayan. Now, by the way, hello Nitish, nice to see you again. Now, he's raised some really hard questions about how we can influence mindsets and behaviours. And I can speak to that myself, because it's true that picking up litter after it's been put on the beach is not as effective as it not being produced in the first place. That there's many different components to changing the way that consumerism works and that waste is managed in everyone's lives. The important lesson that I've taken away from working in this field for the past 20 years is that don't worry about trying to change everything at once. It's about the individual pieces coming together. It's about an effective volunteer group. It's about a project that does nothing more than spread the idea of keyhole gardens as widely as possible. It's about many people acting in their own way. If we look at the big picture, it can often be quite daunting. It can be hard to see that anything could make a difference to the whole system. But in fact, if we look over time, change does happen. And the change happens by small individual efforts and programs that many people do in their own ways. So don't worry about the big picture, simply attack the problem with the energy that we have with the people we know. And keep in mind, it really is a people thing. It's about human beings talking to human beings and getting out there and doing things. As soon as we see a group of volunteers doing something, it looks like our community is a different community. It's a community where people do that. And when we do it, we see ourselves acting as well. So it becomes more likely that we'll act again in future because we feel proud of what we've done. So when it comes to people, awareness is important, but doing is more important. Anything that lets people take action, even humble actions, makes a big difference because it's steamrollers. Nitish, I hope that's a little bit of an answer. Yes, thank you, Malachi. Recognise the importance of data. That was a very good presentation by Camden that pointed out that collect information all the time about everything we do. Take photographs, speak to people, write down what people say. Every single thing we gather is valuable to tell a story about what we're achieving. Particularly to address government, it makes an immense difference if we're able to point to the size of the problem and the size of our response. A couple of people have made the point, and that comes out of Alana's presentation, about the power of our identity, about who we are in our place, about the local culture of the place. And when a change comes out of that local culture, in particular, Malachi's program involved leaders. It worked through the leadership, so it comes out of people speaking for their place and recognising that making these changes it's not just a nice thing we're doing for the environment, it's about our identity, it's about economy, it's about health. It works on many different levels. So when it's the leadership of places speaking, then that becomes part of the identity of the place. And that also includes things like using the visual language of the place, about the visual motives, the graphics, the use of tattoos, for example. All of those things, which really go to identity, make a big difference in the way we communicate with people. Now, thanks everyone. I'd like to open it up now for individual people to make comments. And Stalini, I wonder if I could get you to address what your comment that you just made in the chat then about the role, about it being a people thing. Stalini, are you able to share with us, to unmute and share with us?
Yeah. Hi there, Liz. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yes, it's good.
Sure. Can you just repeat your question, please?
Okay. Can you reflect on what you just put in the chat? Can you share with us all what you just wrote in the chat?
Sure. Well, just to keep things short when you think about it. So let's just take plastics, for example. Everyone knows it's bad for the environment. Everyone knows that it's killing oceanic marine life and all the damage that it's doing. But the key question is, why do we keep purchasing them anyway? And the answer to that, of course, is because it's convenient. People will always prioritize convenience over, generally speaking, prioritize convenience over the betterment of the environment. And these are one of the mindsets that we are seeking to change. It's a balance between comfort and, of course, a bit of selfless service towards consideration of others. So I'm just touching upon one of our the awareness side of our campaigns that we generally do around schools. We invest a lot into our children because we do know they are our future generation. They will be the next change leaders in the future. So that was mainly where my point was going. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I understand, for example, about why do we keep using plastic bags all the time, for example, and so much packaging waste. And there are so many places around the world, including Australian states, where plastic bags are now banned in supermarkets. They're
Oh,
simply not
yes.
allowed. And
Congratulations to Samoa. By the way, I heard they banned plastic bags. We're trying to get there. Yes, exactly.
and that comes out of a conversation, of a changed conversation. Many small actions over time lead to a different conversation, and eventually it becomes politically easy to make a decision.
Yes, precisely.
Tracy, are you with us, Tracy? Can I get you to expand on the point that you made in the chat?
Thank you very much. Yes, I've been joining this and I have learned a lot. And during the breakout Zoom, I think Nissan have raised an important question on how we can change behavior. So like being an islander, like I think that the mindset problem is one of the biggest challenge, especially in Solomon Islands. So like for me, I believe that education, like education awareness to citizens will be one of the very effective way of changing people mindsets. Now that we have, especially with the problem of waste management, I think plastic waste is one of the very challenging part of the waste management sector, especially in Solomon Islands. So yeah, I think education awareness will be very important to educate people to understand what are the problems and the way we can go on with the change of behavior. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Tracy. Now, Nitish, are you with us? Nitish Narayan? Are you there, Nitish?
Yes, I'm here, Les.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you expand on the points that you were making in the chat?
The question that I had posed in the chat, looking at a number of cleanup campaigns that are done at the national level, they're facilitated by NGOs, as well as part of corporate social responsibility that we see nowadays by organizations. But at the end of the day, that it doesn't really address the core issue of irresponsible dumping of wastes by people. And I say this by sharing an example. Back home in Fiji, there's a popular spot by the seaside where you'll see a number of people driving up, parking their vehicles, eating their lunch or afternoon snacks or whatever. They have a lot of signages. They have rubbish bins located with signages properly marked. They even have deterrents such as if you throw your rubbish here, you'll be fined. So fine is imposed. But it does not deter the behavior of these people. I've seen people actually throwing their styrofoam containers or their PET bottles just a few inches away from the rubbish collection bins, and then they walk away. I've gone to the extent of actually walking there and picking it up and throwing it inside, and so do my children. The question that I was trying to raise is, we have these collections, these cleanup campaigns, but it doesn't sort of change the mindset of the people. And if anything, it encourages them to be more responsible because they know somebody else is out there cleaning up after them. So I'm just trying to see what sort of enablers can we sort of put out there. What sort of behavior change can we apply? I understand your response in terms of what you had said earlier. We can't tackle everything, holistically, yeah. But it's such a huge problem that we need to look at what other options available. So maybe some discussions around that. Thank you,
Look, I can actually share something, Nitish, and that's the kind of work we do. We don't have off-the-shelf answers. We have to experiment. We have to have adventurous experiments and see what works. And a wonderful case study, which was in the city of Sydney, it was in the suburbs of Sydney, involved a lot of litter in a park. The people love the park. They use the park all the time. They had their lunches in the park for picnics. And there were a lot of different experiments carried out by the local government to try to see what worked. And the idea that worked the most, that made the biggest difference, was having people with high-vis vests walking around, picking up the litter occasionally and talking to people. Just having conversations. And those people they collected the data. They actually got really good data from all these experiments. And that was the method that was by far the most successful. It was meeting a person who cared and having a conversation. And then to the people who visit, suddenly it seems as if the people who live in this place really care for it and love it. Now, if I'm littering, I'm abusing those people, not just the place. So the human element turned out to be the most powerful of all, a conversation with a person who cared. But every place is different. So it's a matter of having lots of, not just pulling something off the shelf and thinking it'll work, but experimenting with different methods. And when we find something that works, get excited.
Thanks, Les. May I ask Cameron to share his thoughts on this as well, please? Thank you.
Hi, yeah, was that a question for me, Nitish? Camden?
Yes, Cameron. Just
yes.
Just try to share your thoughts as well, please.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, I think in the chat I mentioned, my support of education. And as an organisation, we've looked a lot into behaviour change. Like a lot of organisations, we've run beach cleanup campaigns for over a decade or so now. And what you really want to do is not keep having to go back and cleaning up. So, behavioural change and looking at those societal or community shifts is really important. We looked at a few different behavioural change theories, and one of the key ones that we landed on was one called COM-B, which is an acronym for capability, opportunity, and motivation to behave. So if students, and we focus on school students, if school students are given the capability, i.e. we can provide training for them to give them that skill set, if we're able to give them the opportunity, as in we enable teachers to give students class time to focus on waste action projects, and then we provide them with the motivation, positive incentives, positive reinforcement, perhaps even credits for their school work, certificates, things like that. Lots of small things we can do to motivate. Then those are three key steps to improving behaviour and enhancing pro-environmental action. So, that was a theory. We've now built that into an education program, and the examples that I gave in my presentation have shown that that's really started to work. It's a lot of work and it's not easy, but that theory, when you pulled it into action, it does work.
Great, thanks for that, Camden. Alana, would you like to have a word at this point as well in answering Nitish's question? It's not compulsory, you don't have to, but about how do you deal with the ingrained cultural behaviours of people just freely littering because they're used to doing it?
Yeah, here, working as an NGO here in the Cook Islands, we really truly believe in a lot of awareness raising work that's starting at the school level, the primary school level. So a lot of our time we are actually going into these young classes and talking about pollution, particularly ocean pollution. And we find that the kids, they really are sponges and they take in this information. And this, if anything, this is the generation that is going to be the change that we need, because we see it here in the Cook Islands that the young ones are doing a better job than the older generators. So, we just keep pushing with our schools awareness raising programs and working with our children. And I love the idea of citizen science and engaging the kids more. It gets them excited about this. They understand, they're able to understand this better through citizen science. So I see, a lot of potential in our young youth today.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Alana. So we're nearing the end of our session, everyone. This is a final chance for people to express their views. Is there anyone here who has an idea but is dying to say it, but a little bit shy? This is a chance to share your thoughts with us, or a question that you have.
Yeah, can I jump in, Liz?
Yes, please, feel free.
Hi, I'm Seto from Samoa. From our experience here, awareness and a lot of environmental education goes together with the community to participate in every cleanup and taking the message that waste management is everyone's responsibility. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That was great. Thank you so much, Setoa. There's a space now for anyone who wishes to leap in.
Hi, Les. It's me, Stalini from Tonga Waste Authority Limited. This isn't really a question, and I'm not sure if it was covered because I had to leave for a quick minute. But can I just ask the speakers, looking at what each of you have presented, what would you like to adopt from the other nation? Like, what would you like to implement, take from, supposedly, let's say we here in Tonga take from Solomon Islands a few of their, adopt some of their, what they covered in their presentation. Like, what would each of you speakers like to take away from this?
That's a very good question, Stalini. Let's start with Malachi. What would you take away from the speeches that you've heard? Oh, we can't hear you, Malachi. Oh, I'm sorry, Malachi. I'll have to come back to you. Your microphone's not working. Camden, what would you take away from the other speakers?
Firstly, yeah, really appreciated being here. I have a connection with the Cook Islands, and I've appreciated Te Pukerea's presentation there, particularly speaking regards to Indigenous wisdom. And I think, everyone can learn from every other culture. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, we spend a lot of time trying to learn from tangata whenua, from kaumātua, the elders within our Indigenous communities. And there is just so much to be learned from local communities, and particularly Indigenous communities everywhere. And so, I take that we really need to focus our attention on that to design any local solution that, co-design that locally.
Yeah, that's a good one. Co-design means so to work with local people to create local solutions. And Alana.
Yes, kia ora ana. No, I really, we have a very interesting case here in the Rarotonga, the capital. We find, it's very hard to engage volunteers here when it comes to rubbish cleanups, waste cleanups. It needs to be, a government day off where a lot of our people would get involved and actually go for a rubbish cleanup day, a paid day. And we also find that a lot of visitors to the Cook Islands actually take more ownership and wanting to keep our beaches clean. So, how we engage more local volunteers to take more appreciation and wanting to really care for the environment is still work in process here on the capital. You find when you go out into the outer islands, the values are a lot more stronger over there, and the manatiaki value is stronger. So we can actually really learn a lot from our Painoa islands to bring back to our capital on this side.
Great, really good point. Thank you very much, Alana. So we have time for just one. Oh, Malachi, are you able to get your speaker working?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, good, great. Yep.
Okay. So
take away from
I know Starling is trying to test how paying attention to the other presenters. But I listened. There are so many things they are very common among the presenters in different islands waste management system. But I just want to share the awareness level here in Tonga, over the past 5 years, the awareness is really improving, going up. And one of the reasons because we charge the people for who pay for their service, and we pick up the rubbish. But that's not the case we do in Tonga. Regardless whether you pay your rubbish or not, we pick up everybody's rubbish. Our focus is to keep the environment clean, but we are not driven by money. That's one of the things we do. And also, I was impressed by the presenter from Fiji, who we're going to use the strong link by churches and faith groups to involve in the voluntary waste collection activities, which is very effective here in Tonga. Thanks, Liz.
Great, thank you very much for that, Malachi. So everyone, I'm going to draw this session to a close now. Thank you very much for your attention through the session, for the great points that were made, and for the record that we have in the Zoom chat about what was discussed. I want to particularly thank our speakers, Camden, Malachi, and Alana, for their efforts. Could I get everyone to give a round of applause to our speakers? Thank you very much for your inspiration and your ideas. And please have a lovely afternoon and evening, everyone.